Welcome back to another day of service. We have got a new project that came into the shop today. Now, the project had a problem, and the problem is that the oiler that's supposed to work automatically is not putting out oil the way it should be. So it was brought back into the shop here. Now, the history on this chainsaw was that it was already out for service from before and supposedly had a new oil pump installed and it was supposed to have been working properly. Well, the customer got it back and it just does not seem to be working like it should. So that's why it's sitting into the shop here now, because we're going to do a little bit of investigating and find out whether or not the part was replaced or it just went apart again and just failed. So we're going to get at it. This is another Husqvarna. It's a 455 series, and we're going to get into it and see what we can find. And I want to bring you along with me, and let's take a look and see what we've got. So as you can see, we have this Husqvarna ripped apart. I previously disassembled what we needed to do to get at what I wanted, and that was take a look at that automatic oil pumper. So we're going to get down into it. I want to show you what we're going to be facing and what we're going to be directing our focus to. So let's take a look at that. So what you see here is the side. Now you can notice that the belt guide here is kind of really ripped apart and wore out. We need to get this plate off to get to the pump that's in the back of it. We need to take this clutch off, and as you can see, this clutch is pretty well wore. And I suspect that a bearing is out of it, and we're going to be needed to take this clutch off. Now, to take this clutch off, you need to go ahead and get yourself some specialized tools here. And you need this nut driver right here. And what it does, it fits right in here, like so. And then what you need to do is get yourself, you can buy this kit, you can get this kit right off of Amazon, and you need to get a spark plug stopper. That will go down in where the spark plug was, and that will stop the piston from coming all the way up to the top, and then that you can actually turn this off. Now, when we turn this off, it's counterclockwise. It's not the same as it would be if you loosened up a bolt. It says right on it, off. There's an arrow on it. You would turn it this way. That's how you're going to get that clutch off. So let's get to it and see if we can loosen that up. Okay, so we're going to take our stopper here. We're going to put it in where the spark plug was. We're going to turn that down. Down it's tight. And then we're going to take ourselves a 3/4 inch wrench, stick it on here. Well, we can actually turn this until it reaches the stop. So now we know the piston is up against the stop. We're going to be turning it this way. Ooh, this one's on really tight. I'm going to have to see about getting a wrench on that. Just hold on. So now get back to a problem. I've noticed that it was coming off really, even though we've had the stopper in here, we had our 3/4 inch wrench on here pulling it up. It was really tight. It was super untight. So what I did was I went ahead and got myself a 1/2 inch ratchet on the other side, and I put that on the flywheel side of that nut because I didn't want to start putting more pressure than I wanted to on that piston on itself, because you could actually almost break a part of the crankshaft off if it's just too tight. And whoever put this on before put it on more than they should have. So what I did was I got myself an air ratchet right here with that 3/4, and you have to be very, very delicate when you do that. With the ratchet on one side, the air ratchet on this side, and just tip it, just tap it off and on, just tap it a little bit at a time. Don't put a lot of strain, but just enough to kind of jar that clutch loose. And once you get it loose, now it's free. So that's how we got that apart. Normally you wouldn't have to do that, but in this circumstances, this was torqued on way tighter than it should have been. So I'm beginning to wonder if that oil automatic oil pump was replaced. So let's get into it, take the clutch off, and see how much more we can get at. Alright, let's see if we get that clutch off now. Grab a hold of the flywheel on the other side, and we should be able to turn this off. Always remember, it's counterclockwise. Wherever the arrow says, I'm going to show you that, get that off. If you look real close, see that arrow? There's an arrow there, an arrow there, and it's pointing that way. That's how you loosen it up. Reverse it the other way for tightening it up. Okay, so we can set the nut aside. There. It's looking a little lower. And it is. We'll set that aside. We'll pull the clutch brake off the housing. Now, if we look at this, you can see we've got some grooves in here. Right here. Where the chain has been going down and cutting into the gear sprocket right here. We got some war spots in there. And, oh boy, I can see why this bearing's bad. Let's see if we can pull it off right here. Oh my gosh, the little wheels and everything are gone on the inside. Completely gone. There's a few little of those rods running across the gear right here, but on the other side, they're gone. Completely gone. And by them being gone, it's actually wore apart. There's nothing in there. So the next thing we got to do is we got to pull this rubber plate off, and we have to loosen up that nut screw right here. That. We'll get that mounting screw out. We'll set that aside. You know, if you go on YouTube, you can see a whole video on how to do this step for step. And I got to take this off like so. We'll set that aside. And now we should be able to pull this off. Ooh. Well, you can see this is all ripped apart, so that'll have to be replaced. And now, as I look inside here, this pump should be turning very easily. Let's see if we get a little closer there. So, to me, this is supposed to turn freely, and it's not. It's tight. It's really tight. And this here is a line that runs from the pump up here, and it exits right here onto the bar itself, on the bar and chain. And that's what lubricates it. But at this point, I'm going to have to sit here. We'll blow this out, then we'll take another look at this and see what this looks like. All right, so here we are. We got it all blown out. Now, what you see here is your pump itself, the oil pump. And you have an adjuster, which is at the bottom. And you have different levels. As you turn that screw, it moves from one level to another level to another level. And what it does is it increases the amount of oil that you want to be running through the pump. Now the end of this shaft here is like a cam. It's low on one side and high on the other side. And as it rotates, that's what makes this pump forward. I'm going to push it forward. See that? And as that pushes forward, it takes the oil through the pump, up through the rubber, and back out here onto the chain bar itself. So what I want to do now, I want to take this off here and kind of let's just check to make sure that this pump actually is nice and clean and free working, because this actually should be spinning freely and it's pretty tight. So maybe we need to get it and kind of inspect it and see what it looks like on the inside. So let's do that next. All right, so now I've got the pump out, and I'd like to explain a little bit about this pump. Now, if you notice, right here is the part number. You can have the part number right on there. That's the pump. And this is the pump itself. This here is the adjuster for more or less oil. And this here is the pump itself. And it should turn, which it does. And as it rotates, I want to show you, see there's like a cam, like one side's low and the other side is high. As it turns around to the high side, it pushes this forward like that. And that's what pumps the oil through your pump out through the oil line to the bar itself. And as you turn this, you can see at the bottom here, there's different notches for more or less. And counterclockwise gives you less, more so. You put your screwdriver in there and turn it, and it latches up to the next height, to the next height. And it gives you more as this rotates around on the shaft. So that's how that pump works. And then when it comes to making sure that this pump's in place, this here is your gear drive, right here. And that would go right on here. As this rotates on your crankshaft, that rotates this shaft around. And making sure that when you put your brake drum back on, that you have both of these notches lined up so that they're hooked together. Otherwise, as it rotates, it will not run that gear drive. So that's how that works. So I kind of hope you got a little bit of explanation on how that runs. But yeah, otherwise the pump looks good. We have no problems there. What I see is I'm going to have to order a whole clutch assembly because of the situation of that bearing completely going out. Right here is that bearing, and that bearing failed. And yeah, we got some notches in here. So I'm going to go out and order a new clutch assembly, and that will come with everything that we need to put back into the Husqvarna again. So yeah, that's what we're going to have to do now, is order some parts, and then we'll get back, and then we'll be able to finish putting this back together again. Good morning. Today is a new day, and we're going to get back at that Husqvarna chainsaw today. Got the new parts in to replace the old parts. So let's go over there and take a look and see what we did get in for the replacement parts. So what you can see here is we have the old parts versus the new parts. Now, this plate was very important to why that automatic oiler did not work, because this part here was chewed out and bent back, which was allowing all the wood chips to run up underneath the seal into the area where the automatic pump was. And so that was the biggest problem why it failed. But we have a replacement right here. This is a new one. Everything's done up really well. We have a good replacement. Now, the bearing, remember that bearing? Here it is. There's the new bearing. It's got all the roller pins in it. And we're going to be putting some bearing grease on here before we go ahead and install it. And here is the plastic gear that runs the automatic oiler. That gets hooked right into the clutch itself when we get it all mounted in. So there we are. We have everything that we need to replace that problem with the automatic oiler. Okay, what we're going to do now is go ahead and assemble the cover over the top. You all kind of wondering why I got this Band-Aid on here. Well, I'll tell you what, I was playing with my buddy, and his claw was kind of sharp, and yeah, he scarfed me a little bit in the hand, but that's what happens when you're playing with your best buddy, and things really get a little out of hand, but by golly, we got it bandaged up. So anyway, what we're going to do is, like I said, put this cover on. Now you want to make sure that that's sealed all the way up around here in that groove. We don't want any of that saw dust and any chips getting up underneath there, getting to the oil pump itself. So we'll put the cover on like this. Now you notice it's all sealed in all the way around like it should. All right. Then there is a mounting screw that we will put in here. Make sure there's no dirt on there, like so. And then we'll go ahead and tighten that up, like this. And these are all things you can do yourself. It's not that hard. It really isn't, but it's a part of maintaining your chainsaw, because there are some parts of the chainsaw that are very important to keep maintained, or you will have a problem. There we are, nice and snugged in. So this part is done. Now we're going to go ahead, I want to get some bearing grease. We're going to grease this up really well before we put it on. So let's get at that. So now that we have the plate put on, the next thing we're going to do is pick up our plastic rotating grooves. And what that does is, as it rotates around, it fits into the grooves on the automatic oiler. And that's, as the crankshaft turns around, so does this as well. And that will make this shaft turn. So we'll slip this on here, like so. Now what we're going to do is pick up our clutch right here, and we're going to pick up that bearing. Now you see I put a little bit of bearing grease on there. That will slip right in here like this, like that. And then we will put that on here. Now you have to make sure, you see these grooves here on both sides, here and here? Those grooves have to be fitting into right here, into the plastic cogs there on both sides. And that together rotates, as this clutch turns, it rotates that plastic controller that runs the automatic oiler. So we'll slip this on like so. And as we do, we'll rotate it around until we get it in the, right into the groove, like that. And now, remember, when we took the clutch off, right here, off, we went this way. Now to tighten it up, we have to go the opposite direction, or it's opposite of off. We'll slip it on, and we'll turn it like so. Like that. Now what we're going to do is we have to put our stop in the top of the piston, and that's what we'll do next. So now as we go ahead, now we're going to tighten up the clutch here. We want to go ahead, put your stopper in the top so that you can stop the piston from coming up all the way. And then what we're going to do is pull the starter rope out and wrap it around here. And the reason we do that is because as you tighten up the clutch in reverse, it also pulls the starter cable into the starter itself, and that'll bind up the starter. Now you could get away with not doing this at all by just taking the cover off of the starter side and pulling the starter off entirely. That would be another way of doing it. Then you wouldn't have to deal with the rope at all. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and use the rope, tie it around loosely like that, so that when we back it off in the reverse, it also is going to be pulling that rope into the starter. So we'll put our adapter in here like that, and then we'll take our 3/4 ratchet, we'll stick that on like so, and then we'll, as we tighten that up, you can tighten it up, and as you tighten it up, it's also going to be pulling that rope into the starter. So now we got it tight, and everything is nice and snug and tight. All right, now we can go ahead, remove the cable all the way back, pull your piston stop out like that, and now there we are. We'll pull our adapter off, don't forget that. Put that aside, and now we can go ahead, and there we are. We have the clutch assembled, we have the plate on there, and everything is ready to go. So at this point, we can go on to put the brake assembly back on, and possibly the bar as well. So that's what we're going to do next. Alright, at this point you can kind of see we got the cover on, we've got the bar on, we've got the chain on. But there's some things I'd like to go over with you on this, and it's got to do with the adjustment. Now you can see by looking at this adjustment right here, we're at to the end of the adjustment. And that means that your chain has stretched out so far that we've had to use up the total amount of our adjustment. That adjustment should be back over here. So always make sure you don't exceed and put a lot of pressure on that adjustment screw, because that would ruin the adjustment screw, and that's also a warning that your chain is getting way too long. And that adjustment is made by loosening up these two nuts right here, and then you can put a screwdriver right in there and then make the adjustment that would bring your bar out or in, one of the two. So, and not only that, but now the oiler problem. I did run this chainsaw, but I don't want to run it now because it's quite smoky. All 2 cycles have a lot of smoke, and yeah, it would be quite like a fog in here. But I did go ahead and run it, and now you can see we've got oil coming out here on the bar itself. And also, if you look at over here, I have a test where you would take the chainsaw, run it up against the cardboard. If you run it up against cardboard and you can see oil going onto the cardboard, now you know your oiler is working the way it should be. And that adjustment is made right here on the bottom, right here. You would have, tells you we've got a plus here and a minus here. And that adjustment is right underneath here, right here, on the adjustment. And that would control your oiler either to be a lot or less. You remember that shaft had a cam kind of on the end of it that turned, and as it does, it pumps the oil through that rubber black hose onto the bar. So that's been taken care of. And so now everything looks to be in really tip-top shape. We went ahead, replaced everything. It runs like a champ. Be ready to go out there and cut wood. So there we are. We have finished up another project, and we learned an awful lot, but there's one more thing I want to show you. And you're going to run into this, maybe you will, and maybe you won't, but I did run into this, and I had to go out and investigate and find out what I could do to correct that problem. So let's take a look, and I want to show you one little trick for the day. So the problem that I had was, when I wanted to put the clutch cover back on, I couldn't get it over the clutch plate at all, because what happened was, when I had removed this previously, I had this in the wrong position for the brake and the run, and you may happen to you along the way. And all of a sudden what happens is, if you had it in the brake position and you ripped it off, what happened is, now you want to put that brake back on that drum, it's not going to be expanded wide enough as it would be if it was in a neutral. And then you're not going to be able to get it over that clutch disc. So what you have to do is take the cover, force it on this side right here, force it down on this side until you can get it into those little latches, and press real hard, get your hand on it real tight, and then you bring it back until you snap that back in place. And that's what you got to do to correct it. It's going to be at a loose angle, which it's supposed to be, but you basically want to try to get this point right here locked into the handle so that you can draw that handle back to loosen up that spring, to loosen up that band, and then you can put it back on. It's not broke, it's just that when it was removed, it was in a lock position. So that's how you correct it. It's very simple. Just push on it real hard, as tight as you can go on it, and then force that back until you feel it snap in place. And then you've got that band wide enough that you'll be able to go ahead and slip the cover on. So this is what I'm going to leave you now today. I've done enough. I did enough jibber jabbering, and I hope you'll learn a little bit from what I did here. I did. I sure did learn a lot. And I want you, please subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. It makes the channel bigger all the time, and that's what I need. I need everyone that subscribes out there, and I am so thankful that you are subscribing. And I would like to get that up a little higher, because that's what I need to do. And so again, thank you very much. You have a great day, and I will be back with a new project.